Welcome on the AM News. Let's get to our first story, shall we? Members of the Civil and Local Government Staff Association Ghana, that is CLOGSAG, have warned government to steer clear of their pension funds. The finance minister last month hinted at attempts to include some pension funds in the domestic debt restricting program. Now, addressing members of CLOGSAG to mark the May Day celebration here in Accra, Deputy Executive Secretary Kojo Krakani said workers would never allow their pensions to be included in the debt exchange program.
Arrangements are being threatened, even though the contributory three-tier pension scheme has begun to yield positive results. It is very relevant and significant to maintain the existing pension structure. CLOGSAG is sending a warning signal to all forces, both visible and invisible. Steer clear of current pension arrangements as enshrined in the National Pension Act 2008 Act 766. He who has ears, let him hear this message. CLOGSAG is sending a warning signal to all forces, both visible and invisible, to steer clear of current pension arrangement as enshrined in the National Pensions Act 2008 at 766. He who has ears, let him hear this message. The outcry of public sector workers, especially teachers and civil servants, during the beginning of the 21st century, be reverted onto government pension under either Cap 30, that is 1951, or the Teachers' Pension Fund 1952, led to the setting up of the Presidential Commission on Pensions in 2004, chaired by Dr. T.A. Bediako of blessed memory. The Presidential Commission on Pensions was tasked to ascertain whether the observation by workers that Cap 30 paid better lump sum or gratuity and monthly pension than Senate was accurate. Also to see whether all public sector workers could be placed on Cap 30. If not, they should sustainable pension scheme. The Commission made profound findings and noted that, 1, workers generally believe that pension earnings were the responsibility of the employer only, and government. Another finding, best practices all over the world showed that pension is a shared responsibility, and thus the worker and employer ought to contribute towards an employee's pension in a fully funded scheme. The Commission also founded Cap 30 was not sustainable because it was not funded. They went on. Surprisingly, responsibilities of a worker, the Commission found this one too. The responsibility of a worker do not diminish while on retirement.
Well, now the Trades Union Congress wants government to convert the National Cathedral into a national hospital, insisting the project cannot pass for a priority and ought to be discontinued. The cathedral, a pet project of President Akakpo, has been embroiled in controversy over cost and irrelevance. Speaking at the May Day celebrations in Bolgatanga, Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress, Yao Ban, said the current economic situation of the country did not support the construction of such an edifice.
The reason Ghana has had to seek IMF support almost every 3 years is largely due to the flaws in the way our economy has been managed based on the neoliberal free market ideology. We would like to reiterate our well-known position that the IMF program can never take us out of this crisis. Our history of engagements with the IMF provides ample evidence that IMF-sponsored programs and policies cannot change our economic circumstances. Another IMF program will only impose more economic burden on us. We have to change the situation ourselves as Ghanaians. We believe strongly that government can lead us out of this crisis. And the government can do so by cutting expenditure on non-essentials, including the need to stop spending our hard-earned revenue on a national cathedral. Let me say this again. We believe that government can lead us out of this crisis by cutting all non-essential expenditures, including the need to stop spending our hard-earned revenue on a national cathedral. I'm sure the president will have something to say about this.
Well, the TUC is also warning that workers may be forced to demand salary increments if inflation is not tamed. Dr. Yaba said his outfit would not accept any increment in salary and emoluments of Article 71 office holders.
The first thing we want to do, if we really mean to protect incomes, is to protect jobs. We need to protect the jobs that afford workers the opportunity to earn regular incomes. Too many workers are losing their jobs in Ghana because some employers are abusing their rights to hire and fire. Other employers are also taking advantage of the weaknesses in our labor law and replacing permanent employment contracts with fixed-term employment contracts. In the last 5 years, TUC alone has lost thousands of its members due to this practice, which is being promoted and facilitated by private employment agencies. That is why we have been pushing for the review of the national labor law to protect jobs and to protect incomes. Mr. President, once again, we would like to appeal to you to ensure that the labor law review is completed this year. This is very important. We have been appealing for a very, very long time, but we are very unhappy about the slow pace at which the labor law reform is going. If nothing is done, we are afraid that you will leave office and we will not get the labor law. We appreciate your commitment to the review, and we will be very, very happy that if you leave this as a legacy for the working people of Ghana. Another measure that government can take to effect.
Well, President Akakpo, meanwhile, has reiterated government's stance in not shortchanging workers in terms of protecting their pensions. He was speaking at the May Day event.
In spite of the difficulties, the difficult challenges government employers face, this was made possible through consensus building to ensure businesses attain high levels of employment to hasten economic recovery. This is no mean feat, as it is the first time in the history of the determination of the national daily minimum wage that the parties agreed to the payment of COLA after wage adjustment for the year has already been agreed. This is an indication of our collective resolve to protect workers and their standards of living. You would also recall that this year began with government and organized labor concluding negotiations on the 2023 base pay and pay point relativity for public sector workers in January 2023. Following a series of consultations and consensus building within the Public Services Joint Standing Negotiating Committee, the base pay on the single spine salary structure was increased by 30% over the 2022 figure, effective 1st January 2023. Indeed, the 30% increment of the 2023 base pay is the highest since the introduction of the single spine salary structure in 2010.
Now, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Abu-Jinapor, has indicated that government is still very committed to the fight against illegal mining, despite recent allegations of high-level political interference. He insisted that he still had the backing of the president in his quest to deal with the Galamsey menace. He was speaking to the press on the sidelines of a National Youth Conference on Natural Resource and Environmental Governance. There's more in this report by Esther Nkrumah.
The National Youth Conference on Natural Resources and Environmental Governance is aimed at including the youth in the planning, implementation, and evaluation of environmental issues. Executive Coordinator for the Youth Network for Development, Chibeze Ezekiel, emphasized the need for promoting public education to raise awareness on the importance of preserving our natural environment.
I think it has to do with the level of awareness or education, because if people are told to plant trees and they don't see the value or the importance, then they will not be motivated or encouraged to plant trees. But if you're able to engage them, let them understand why they must plant trees, I think that will go a long way to get the youth involved to plant trees.
Addressing the media, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Abu-Jinapor, who was the keynote speaker for the event, assured that the government's continuous commitment to the fight against illegal mining is unwavering.
The president will not countenance any interference. If there's one person who's been committed to this fight against illegal small-scale mining, it is President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. I've worked with him closely, and I mean closely, and closely. And I do know that his commitment to this fight is totally unflinching. And indeed, it will be scandalous, and it will be far-fetched, and it will be impossible for President Akufo-Addo to interfere in the fight against illegal small-scale mining. Indeed, on the contrary, he is the man who is giving me all the courage, who's giving me all the strength, who's giving me all the backing and authority and mandate to go frontal.
Meanwhile, NP for Medina, Francis Xavier Susu, indicated that the government is being hypocritical in its fight against environmental degradation.
Promises made by government and commitment made by government must be backed with action. Sometimes it is quite disappointing to know that government can make very beautiful commitment to, afforestation, make very beautiful commitment to protection of the environment, and yet at the blind side of all Ghanaians, they become the leaders of the environmental degradation. For me, that is duplicity, and that is hypocrisy, and that is bad faith. That is not taking the people of Ghana seriously.
The conference served as a platform for young green entrepreneurs to showcase their innovative climate and waste management solutions to attract partnerships and investments.
What are these products made from?
They are made up of used materials. I don't call them waste. Used materials like cardboard, old newspapers, plastic bottles, disposable spoons, champagne bottles, seashells. Yeah.
Can you walk us through your products?
I'm Jessica from Econexus Ventures, and then we are a waste to energy company. We convert agro waste to ethanol fuel for cooking. So we have here the ethanol fuel. We call it Eco Gel, yes, because it's quite jelly-like. So this is made from pineapple waste, cashew apples, and then sugarcane molasses. So this fuel comes with its specific stove So without a stove, we can't use the gel, and without the gel, we can't use the stove.
The theme for this year's National Youth Conference was centered on promoting effective youth participation in governance of the natural resources and environmental sector. Esther Nkromet's report read to you.
And that's our recap of the news this morning. But stay with us. The news review up next as we're joined by anti-graft crusader Edem Sinan.